So why do people hate? Why do you hate in particular? What makes you hate somebody? What makes you hate a certain group? What makes you have a bias or ignorance about somebody? Buenas kamusta? I'm Fernandez, and I want to deconstruct hatred, ignorance, bias, etc. And that's what I'm gonna try to do in this video. That's what I'm trying to do for some of my academic work, etc. Now, where does hate begin in the first place? Well, it's born out of ignorance, right? So many things are born out of ignorance. Curiosity, um, you can literally make friends with people, have no self awareness because you were ignorant about it. Um, you can have some of the best experiences in life out of ignorance, but you can also have biases out of ignorance as well. And that's what needs to be deconstructed, because when you have biases, you can have active ignorance that becomes hate. You can have passive ignorance that just stays the way that it is, because nobody calls you out and nobody makes you aware of your bias in that regard. Or the best option is, of course, deconstructing and trying to you know deprogram that bias out of your system. you know because think of bias as a bug, a computer bug or even a virus. It literally changes the way that you perceive certain groups of people. And so bias is something that you should always constantly try to eradicate. Not because, it's best to be politically correct, or it's best to be you know, not canceled, but because you literally miss out on the fullness of humanity when you allow your biases to quite literally take over your perspective, and when you allow biases to stop you from getting to know people who you would get to know otherwise, from getting to understand and empathize with the experiences of other humans. Because ultimately, what is life without the people in it? What is life when all you're doing is, being a hater, not liking this group or that group for this reason or that reason? Because you refuse to check your bias, and because you refuse to simply learn more about certain groups of people who you should have tried to learn more about, and who you could have learned a lot more about. And I mean, at the same time, bias also makes you, it warps your sense of what is reality, right? Because when you are biased against certain groups of people, then the only people who you gravitate to are those who think just like you, right? Try to do things another way, though, because the number one reason for ignorance is because you simply do not know people who have those identities, who have those experiences. Most Americans do not know somebody who is transgender. Most Americans do not know somebody who's Asian American. And as a result, most Americans are transphobic and have transphobic biases because they don't understand and cannot empathize with transgender people in a lot of the same ways that a lot of people, that most Americans believe that Asian Americans are, foreign adversaries who care more deeply about their nation of origin um, over the U.S. And I say this as an Asian American. When you get to know me, you know that I'm not a conniving ass bitch. You know that I don't care. I am a regular ass person just like you, trying to make it in this world just like you, in this type of society, with the things that I struggle through and go through in life. Um, And I am literally just like you. Asian Americans are just like most other people. Some are ignorant as well in terms of things like racism, um, genderism, etc. Others try to be awake, like myself included. Yeah. That's why I feel like it is important for me to talk about bias and hate, because we really don't understand where we're coming from sometimes. And oftentimes, somebody else is the person that gives you that swift kick in the ass to let you know that you shouldn't treat people that way. But what happens when when you don't get that? Because maybe the people you have in your life are also ignorant and are also in need of a swift kick in the ass, to get rid of their own ignorance and biases. Well, you can always look at the internet, but not just look through the internet, not just look through TikTok, etc. You can literally meet people of all different walks of life, on Facebook, on Twitter, Instagram, etc. But of course, the key thing is to literally not be a bigoted asshole at them, to not have your first introduction to them be, I hate this about people who are like you. No. If you try to cultivate relationships with people who are unlike you, who have characteristics that you don't like, well, you get to experience more of humanity. And I do encourage you to do that. I literally I literally have so many like white Republican friends. I am me in Texas. So, and I am definitely on the complete opposite side of the political spectrum. But we can vibe because I'm not going to talk politics with people like that, but I do see them fundamentally as human beings. I'm not going to just impose my values on them. And it's not because I'm feckless, and not because, I feel like it's okay for them to be ignorant. No, it's because I mind my own business when it comes to those things. And sometimes a fight is not worth having. But when you treat people like humans, but you also let them know where you stand on certain things, that has a good chance at, getting them swayed at least a little bit, You never learn unless you are willing to grow. And you're not willing to grow if you want to stay in your ignorance. And I mean, that's something I'm trying to do myself. Because I don't want to just, think of every man as being homophobic. I don't want to think of every Republican as being somebody who hates me for just being in existence, right? Because what happens to me, I end up being scared. I end up having this fear, and I just end up not having, a fun time at life, right? I don't cultivate relationships like I could. I don't have good self esteem because I'm so scared. And so it's just like, okay, well, what if I go things another way? What if I do things another way? What if I give people a chance? I'm not gonna seek it out, but when I am given the chance, I'll give it a chance. And that's what I try to do sometimes. And when that happens, yeah, things are they work out pretty well, I will say. Usually. Sometimes, life happens, because life happens. Yeah. I want to make this video because, well, you don't have to be a hater. You don't have to stay a hater. You can literally change your biases. You can unlearn your biases. You can deprogram your biases and try to be a better human overall, because that is the goal in this life, right? Thanks for watching. Take care.